Hello, everyone. We are again in another beautiful session with all the participants from around the world, two continents, three continents, four continents, like different ones from everyone around the world. We are super welcome and we are super happy today to join the second part of the session 80. Our host, Daniel Hoodup, is helping us with the technique, and our super host, Gary Lugo, is the one who is going to complete the second part of the session. We are going to have interesting topics today about Yahweh, about like harvest, and also about how it was like we are mentioning here some like things about genetic and sexual reproduction, a lot of science today. And yeah, what happened when sometimes like guest like kind of like the STS or service to the self polarity appears and use situations. But not to gossip more about this and not to say too much today about this. Welcome, Gabriel, and welcome all participants again.
Thank you, Kat, for the intro and the brief summary. We are definitely going into history and some of the metaphysics as explained in the Law of One that happened around the time of Yahweh and that intervention with planet Earth. So, yeah, last time we covered the most intense portion of this session. This is going to be a little bit more light as we go into information that I personally consider somewhat transient, as Ross says. Maybe just a couple of things that are philosophically interesting for us who want to understand the dynamics of polarity. So I think that's what we can salvage out of the rest of this session. And we left at question 14. Rather, I covered session 13, and now we're going into question 14. So we're going to start there. The conversation goes from inquiring into the confederation, which is the confederation of planets in service of the one infinite creator. You can go watch that in the previous video, previous session we had. Here, Don switches and asks about Yahweh and says, can you tell me how Yahweh communicated to Earth's people? I think we covered already that Yahweh is a social memory complex. This is where it's revealed that it's also from the Confederation. A couple of things are better understood in terms of the legacy that it was left by them and that influence major religions and current major religions. So we're going to get a little bit more of information here. Some of it I can't really uh, delve too deep into, as it seems uh, mostly speculatory. And you know my position in terms of speculation. I have um, fewer and fewer interest in that. So here Don asks the question, and Ra says just how Yahweh communicated with Earth's people. And Ra says this is a somewhat complex question. It's kind of involved. They say the first communication was what you would call genetic. The second communication was the walking among your peoples to produce further genetic changes in consciousness. The third was a series of dialogues with chosen channels. So it seems like even communication, raw, any influence that we may have or entities may have with each other seems to be communication. Because this genetic communication, we would think that communication is something like verbal or telepathic, or but it's just a transfer of information, isn't it? So if there is a transfer of information, we can call that a communication. And in that case, a genetic transfer of information, it's precisely what they would call communication. So I guess that's why they say it's complex, or at least to my limited understanding, that would explain it. So again, the outline here is that the first communication was genetic, the second was walking among us, just like Ra allegedly did back then. Um, and they did produce further genetic changes in consciousness. It's kind of strange, right? We think genetic is just the body, but well, where does the body come from if not mind? So changes in mind produces changes in body, I would suppose. So the third was a series of dialogues with chosen channels. We can see this as a trend in the Confederation, how they got involved physically, and then they moved more into mental communication. Question 15. Don says, can you tell me what these genetic changes were and how they were brought about? Good inquisitive question here. Ross says some of these genetic changes were in a form similar to what you call the cloning process. Thus, entities incarnated in the image of the Yahweh entities. The second was a contact of the nature you know as sexual, changing the mind-body-spirit complex through the natural means of the patterns of reproduction devised by the intelligent energy of your physical complex. We're going to get a little bit more as to what this means. This sexual changes, which to me have to do with the physical changes that happen, and we'll get into that. So they talked about the two genetic changes. Remember, the third was just a series of dialogues. So even though there is communication, there is an alteration, of course, of the mental complex, just like, Ra's impact when they communicated through the channel of Carla impacted us, all of us, being here in a way, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So there are changes that happen by the transfer of information. This is not so difficult to picture because we do this all the time with people and animals if we want to go cross densities. So this is happening all the time. Um, I sometimes hear, especially in the early sessions, there is some fear, as to, oh my God, they manipulated us genetically. It seems like that's, the language that's being used here, but everything really is just a manipulation of genetics in a way. And we can cite so many examples in nature because we humans are always interfering with nature. So I don't have something against or for that, but that's just reality as it is. So again, these genetic changes, I think they're referring the cloning process is because of Mars, and we get a hint for that, or maybe an explanation directly. But this is the cloning process. 75,000 years ago, they moved the mind, body, spirit complexes of Mars to Earth, and there were some adaptations that were needed. And since Yahweh did it, I suppose their imprint was in that genetic change as an adaptation for mind, body, spirit complexes from Mars to be adequate, I guess, physically here. It goes beyond my pay rates to figure this out, but that's what I get. Um, so we're gonna go in more details here. Don says, "Can you tell me specifically what they did in this case?" And Ron says, "I think we just told you that." Ask the question again. So question 17, Don says, can you tell me the difference between the sexual programming, let us say, prior to Yahweh's intervention and after intervention? Ross says, this is a question which answer, can we can only answer. This is a question which we can only answer by stating that intervention by genetic means is the same no matter what the source of this change. Shrug my shoulders. I suppose it's the same, no matter what the source is, just genetic intervention is genetic intervention. I'm not sure about this Q&A. Somebody else can shine some light on this. Question 18, though, Don is asking a little bit more on genetic sexual changes. And he asks, can you tell me Yahweh's purpose in making the genetic sexual changes? Ra says the purpose 75,000 years ago, as you measure time, of the changes subsequent to that time were of one purpose only, that to express in the mind-body spirit, or the mind-body complex, I correct myself, In the mind-body complex, those characteristics which would lead to further and more speedy development of the spiritual complex. And I think it was definitely the same idea behind the other genetic changes. Um, so 75,000 years ago, if we take into consideration that was the Mars population moving here, I guess they wanted to include something that would make them develop spiritually more uh, faster, spiritually faster than whatever we had or they had. I don't know, but that was the idea. It's always with this idea of promoting evolution. I have a question here in general. It's a rhetorical question, of course, but why do we why do we want this so much? Why do we want to change others so much? It's a good question for us to consider. What's that drive that even densities away from us, they still have this drive. Let's help him out. Why? It's a good question. Question 19, Don says, how did these characteristics go about leading the more spiritual development? So these new additions, how do they help spiritually? It's a good question. Ross says the characteristics which were encouraged included sensitivity of all the physical senses to sharpen the experiences and the strengthening of the mind complex in order to promote the ability to analyze these experiences. So, heightened sensitivity and a greater capacity to analyze these experiences. I guess from one perspective, the idea of the experiment was that, well, I guess, if they have more sensitivity to the environment and everything with their bodies and a higher mental capacity, then that would speed their evolution spiritually. But didn't work. Why not? We'll find out. Don says in question 20, when did Yahweh act to perform the genetic changes that Yahweh performed? Ross says the Yahweh group worked with those of the planet you call Mars 75,000 years ago in what you would call the cloning process. So there it is, explicit. There are differences, but they lie in the future of your time-space continuum, and we cannot break the free will law of confusion. Shrug my shoulders again. Not sure what to say there. They couldn't say. So once that, we don't know. They say that 3,600 years ago, approximately the time of attempts by those of the Orion group during this cultural complex, um, yeah, I skipped a good portion because they mentioned 2,600 years ago. Yeah, so this time, it was the second time. I'm going to read it. It's going to sound all convoluted, but they start saying 2,600 years or 2,600 approximately years ago. That was the second time, but it was actually 3,600 years ago. In essence, this was like the second time that the Orion group was contacting this group. And this was a series of encounters in which the ones called Anak were impregnated with the new genetic coding by your physical complex means so that the organisms would be larger and stronger. So there's a change in the physical complex here in one of these changes. Um, and this was 3,600 years ago, the same time that Orion did their imprint. And we'll find out how and why. Don says, why did they want, read it again. Why did they want larger and stronger organisms? Ra says the ones of Yahweh were attempting to create an understanding of the law of one by creating mind-body complexes capable of grasping the law of one. The experiment was a decided failure from the view of the desired distortions due to the fact that rather than assimilating the law of one, it was a great temptation to consider the so-called social complex or subcomplex as elite or different and better than other selves. This one of the techniques of service to self. Don is going to ask a little bit more clarification on this, but having a superior body and mind, I guess, naively, we can say, oh, yeah, that would produce, of course, more service to others. But free will moves in the direction that it wants, and it will use whatever means there are to move in whatever direction it wants, right? So maybe that's a lesson that's happening right now. I think there is a there's a limited view that I hear all the time that is, well, these changes, even though they're supposed to be for service to others, in the grand scheme of things, are they failing? I don't think they fail. Wouldn't that be contrary? This is just a reflection here, but wouldn't that be contrary to, like we're failing the creator or something's failing the creator? Isn't it everything the creator? So there's no such thing as failure. It's just opportunities that are open for exploration. I guess from the perspective of the limited self, we can say that, because we have expectations, we have hopes, we have ideas as to how the world, the universe should be. But the more we have these ideas, the more we interfere and the more we just change things. So, in a way, the acting self is always disappointed, and yet the creator is always enjoying life or reality. So, it always depends on the point of perspective that we have. How are you looking at, from where are you looking at from? From where are you looking at? I don't know. It's one of those things that can go on and on. But yeah, that's what happened. And yeah, the next question, it's going to clarify this a little bit more. Next couple of questions, actually. So question 21, Don says, no, this is the one that I just covered, didn't? Yes. So 22, Don says, then the Orion group, I'm not sure that I understand this. Do you mean that the Orion group produced this larger body complex to create an elite so that the law of one could be applied in what we call the negative sense? Ra says this is incorrect. The entities of Yahweh were responsible for this procedure in isolated cases as experiments in combating the Orion group. I guess I can play devil's advocate here and say that the word combating is used in a metaphorical way and all that stuff, but why? Why do we need to oppose the other side? It's interesting. I'm not sure where Yahweh in terms of density is, fourth, fifth, sixth density. Maybe somebody knows. But this reminds me of something else that Ra talks about, which is a fourth density phenomenon that both positive and negative fourth density entities, they're trying to convince each other, basically, come join us in our peace and happiness all together, and the other ones, come join us in, service to self. And Ra says that they both lose polarity in this. So it's a lesson that it's learning for density to just stop trying to interfere with the other. Just let them be, you know? So that's the big lesson. Um, and, these changes, if the entities of Yahweh did it, for the purpose of um, opposing the Orion group, what result would you expect? You know? So Ross says, however, the Orion group were able to use this distortion of mind body complex, to inculcate the thoughts of the elite rather than concentrations upon the learning, teaching of oneness. Am I the only one that finds humor here? I mean, they just use it and said, oh, great, a better body, let's influence more of the negative. Um, and why not? Why not? Of course, the creator would want to do something like that. Oh, look, I have a better body to explore and service the self. I'll do it. Why not? And it makes sense. Like I said, free will, which is the nature of the one creator, of the one self, it's going to want to explore it everywhere. It's like water. Water goes wherever it wants to go. It has no preference. It just follows, the path of least resistance. So that's how the Orion group was able to create this, um, or actually influence themselves into that, which was created by Yahweh, this opportunity. Don says, question 23, well, was Yahweh then of the Confederation? Ra says, Yahweh was of the Confederation, but was mistaken in its attempts to aid. And Don says, then Yahweh's communication did not help or did not create what Yahweh wished for them to create. Is this correct? Ra says, the results of this interaction were quite mixed. Interesting. Where the entities were of a vibratory or vibrational some characteristic which embraced oneness, the manipulations of Yahweh were very powerful or useful, not powerful. Wherein the entities of free will had chosen a less positively oriented configuration of some total vibratory complex. Such a complicated way to say when they chose the negative side. Those of the Orion group were able, for the first time, to make serious inroads upon the consciousness of the planetary complex. So again, it's mixed because free will do whatever it wants, whatever it can do. It'll follow that. So was it a mistake? Was it a bad result? Of course not. It just adds more to the diversity of experiences and interaction between these beautiful two polarities that exist, which was very boring, apparently, when we didn't have these polarities. Makes you appreciate even more the creation. So, last question I will cover. Promise you, it's going to be a short one. Uh, Don says, can you tell me specifically what allowed the most serious of these inroads to be made by the Orion group? And Ross says this will be the final full question. Specifically, those who are strong, intelligent, etc., have a temptation to feel different from those who are less intelligent and less strong. This is a distorted perception of oneness with other selves. It allowed the Orion group to form the concept of the Holy War. As you may call it, this is a seriously distorted perception. There were many of these wars of a destructive nature. So it seems like around this time, our bodies and minds became stronger and more intelligent, although they seem to suggest that it was just a small portion. It wasn't the whole planet. So it was small experiments, and this might have created, something. I mean, I can go on a rant here and speculate, but it's just not my thing anymore. But that's what they're saying. This happened, and there's another opportunity for the body or the human experience, let me say that, the human experience to, yeah, play with this, which was offered. There's a hidden reflection here that I would say to everybody. And this is an invitation. You. Yeah, I'm talking to you, specifically you. You who are listening. Who else? There's a deeper reflection here. See how strength of mind and body has an effect on how we allow polarity to make changes around the self. I'm talking about the manifested self, you. So there are obvious strengths that you have. They may be hidden because we like to repress it for a lot of reasons. There's a huge strength in you. And I refer to all of you, all of us. If we start tapping into this strength, we get nervous, don't we? When we start talking about ourselves and what we like to do, what makes us happy, that drive that comes through makes us a little bit nervous. And we tend to repress a little bit that service that we have because it's a very strong and powerful thing that we have to offer to the planet. Part of that nervousness, I feel, is because we don't know still or yet how to use this gift. We call it our gift, our purpose, our natural service, and so on. And makes us move a little bit deeper into why it is that we want to do what we like doing. We could use it, of course, in the negative sense or in the positive. So I think that's why you ever heard that what you fear the most in you is the most powerful thing? Like if you want to, be creative, you want to do things, but you don't trust yourself. "Oh, I'm not sure this is for me, a little bit inadequate, unworthiness, all these things. It's a fear of letting, this powerful thing coming through you. That's it. And that's a hidden reflection here because that strength, we have to know how to use it. Or rather, we need to be sure that the reason why we want to be the way we do is because we want to see a change in the world that is positive. If we're not sure, then, that's why our minds act like, oh, hold on, we're not sure which polarity we're moving. Guess what? It looks in our minds like emotions that prevent us, puts the brakes on, you know. No, let's not explore that side of us. So another reason why to choose a polarity, I kept saying in my podcast for 4 years, I don't care, what your decision is. Just choose a polarity and move with that. See how it feels. You might choose the negative polarity for a little while and explore that. There's nothing wrong. Go on, be controlling, manipulative of yourself and others. Just do it. Why not? If that's what you feel, it may be your path. And if not, you learn a big lesson. It moves you, move the pendulum in one way, it may come back the other, with more strength. So all of this is available for us to see what is, in which direction do we want to move. And if it's positive, then, put the nitro in, turbo, whatever, and keep going in that direction. The more you taste it, the more it comes through. So I just wanted to take that moment of strength in intelligence, to point out that obviously all of us have something that's coming that we can't take credit for. None of us can take credit for whatever's coming through us. And yet it's the most powerful thing that we can do for ourselves and others. So facing those fears, like I said, is just breaking those barriers that are they're just holding back, all the good things and kindness that we can bring to the world and change lives. What a powerful thing to change somebody's lives. It's right there. Just gotta tap into it, trust it. But this image must be must be gone. Before I finish, I want to also nerd on an analogy here. talking about positive and negative, the interaction of these two polarities, and to dissipate a little bit, I don't mean to use the word, sounds redundant here, but the polarized view to say that, oh, all the negative stuff that happened, that's why we are the way we are. It is true. Yes, it's the way we are, but it's not something that should feel like it should not have happened. Um, did I ask this question? Anybody read The Silmarillion here, Lord of the Rings? Am I alone? I'm still going to talk about it, so it doesn't matter. Um, so the cosmology in Middle Earth, come on, you guys should know what Middle Earth is in Lord of the Rings. Just imagine the cosmology of this, right? How was the world created? It's a very simplistic, but yet it contains, the whole polarity thing. And there is the one creator, right? Eru Iluvatar. It's called the one, right? This is God. And I'm going to use the pronoun he, sorry, but um, he had a court of Valar. They were angels, and all of them they would sing to his uh, to his presence. And when they they sang, somebody, just one of them, started to be distorted, and his distortion was felt in the choir or the song until it was, interrupted, and they would feel like, oh, look at you interrupting again, the singing. And it happened a couple of times. Then that was brought down to Middle Earth, and they started creating, this planet. And when, long story short, the planet was created, this one entity, Melkor, he was the one causing like, all the other Valors, the other angels. They created beautiful landscapes and things, and Melkor would come and destroy everything, just break down everything. He was like a child. And he did it several times. And it was like a sort of battle. We create, he destroys. We create, he destroys. So the two polarities working, more and more together in this opposing forces. And the description at the end of this cosmology is that once it was all done, you know, over and done, it was beautiful. We had Middle Earth. That's why Earth looks this way. It's all, ragged and broken and all these things. But, the nature of Eru Iluvatar or the one is just that no matter what happens, everything looks beautiful. That's nature. So just another way to put into perspective that these polarities are, even though they seem like they're working against each other, they need each other and they both work to create everything on the macro scale, this whole cosmological thing, and on the micro scale in your own mind. So let them work in unison. Merge the shadow with yourself. You'll see beauty there. Nobody's perfect. We all have our shadows, and our shadows are probably our strongest things. Just gotta put them in service. That's it. That's all I got for you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you for the summary, for the analogies, for all these different words and thoughts you expressed today here. While you were telling and you were explaining this about like working in either service to the self or service to the others, something that I remind saw from a woman was explaining when you start, like when you realize this process that you have became like either or you have been doing something wrong and then you want to heal, that is sometimes this tendency, you were talking about the pendulum, like you are working super good and you are doing everything good and it's working out and you feel kind of altruist somehow, but then it started to be a kind of a hedonist because like I'm doing everything good and just this kind of thing is the one is going to help me. This woman was saying like how some people tend to heal in fails, which is like it goes from that direction, from one direction straight to the other direction, but it never gets into the balance. And that sometimes here, at least in the in the session, is again this, because they say like they were trying to this interaction was quite mixed, and it can come like sometimes you can really work that okay, we are going to do love one and it's just love one and nothing else, and like we are the one who are the chosens and we are the one who the only that we can change this, which again is going to point in that direction, very boxy, very edgy, and then you will somehow recline other kind of thoughts or other kind of ideas that may work as well. So to recall to the one who is going to this process, remember always to keep this exercise of balancing. That is super super important, and also in the love one is several times mentioned, like balancing, work from one direction to the other direction and then try to find this middle point. Is when you are like also walking in the blade of a knife, you can walk there. Is very difficult, to keep it this balance, but sometimes you can go to one edge or to the other edge, and it's natural till you get the expertise to get into this play that is super thin, is difficult, but is the one actually is going to allow you to have this discernment and to keep in mind what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So this session, yeah, we see it like somehow the human race is sometimes going in another direction. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that we are always failing, because without failing will be for sure not progress. So that's that the kind of like I'm learning, I'm evolving in this process. I'm seeing that Daniel has something to say.
Yes, I have actually a question. And Gary, you just said something that really catch my attention. You said that our shadow side, our shadow part is one of our strongest part. I would you mind to expand a bit on that? What you mean?
Sure. Thank you. Beautiful question. So what we refer to the shadow self, by the way, Tad, thank you for giving those examples and elaborating more on the on this work that we do. Um, but yeah, the shadow self. We have to understand first, why is it a shadow? Why is it dark? Why is there a part of us that is dark? There is mentally a repression of certain behaviors, certain attitudes, thoughts, desires, ideas that we have for some reason, because our mind was not mature enough and was conditioned or impacted by the environment, people, situations, etc. It's sort of, they said no to this. I'm not referring to people particularly, although, you know, it's the natural thing that the world will um, impact us that way. So there are part of ourselves that are just repressed, and we think they're wrong. So we look at them and we say, well, I have a good heart, but there are things in me that they're pretty bad. I would never, I would never talk about this. I've done things that I'm not proud of, and so on. So there's a lot of stuff that's there that we know, if we're honest, we're brutally honest with ourselves, we can see those parts. We can see those voices that say, not very proud of that. I was wrong. So unless we resolve this inner conflict, because here's the thing. if it was true, and we would say, oh, that was wrong. Nope. There wouldn't be something coming up again that stimulates our emotions. So our emotions are always talking to us. If we think about something and it's neutral, then it's gone, no problem. But we do see this recurring cycle in certain attitudes, behaviors, or just, you know, thoughts that we have. So that repression is holding on to something that we don't know yet because we haven't processed it. We have no idea why we had, that desire, that um, um, attitude or behavior. We don't know. In other words, we have repressed something that was natural in us to behave in a way, and we never developed it. So here's the thing. I can teach you a lot of stuff that doesn't really resonate with you, but in the society it's helpful. But Daniel, keep doing this, and you learn all these things and you do these things. And that's how we grow up. We grow up repeating things that we don't really care about. We really don't. If we look inside, there are things that we really want to do. Yes. So there are things that we do because it's repetitive and it's supposed to be good for us. And there are other things that we want to do, that we just desire to do. And part of those things is those repressed ones. So we have to let those flourish, go, move, develop. So that's what I call the shadow self, which is just lurking there, waiting. And it feels very difficult to work with this. Oh my God, it's so difficult to face my shadow self. Why? Because you either hate it or you don't like it or you have something against it. In other words, you have something against yourself subconsciously. You don't know it. So it feels bad to just face this. But there is power in there because it just keeps coming. So in other words, there's something that just you cannot stop from coming through, but you have conditioned yourself to keep it down, keep it to yourself, don't talk about it, you know. Um, so much to explore there because this is the purification of the mind that must happen if we are to be of service in a very reliable way and consistent. So yeah, we cannot, our service depends on how much we clear ourselves from the things that keeps holding back that which comes through us naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's. Thank you very much. I will think about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, that's catalyst. That's what happened with catalyst when it doesn't go to the spirit, it goes to the mind, and then at the end, appears in the body, and it will repeat and it will repeat till you finally somehow remember what is that happening to you. Anyone has another question today that will the time to um, rise, to put it into the space, and then we will can exchange the point of view. Really quiet. So you were super sure, Gabriel. You were like, this session is going to be short, short and sharp.
I knew it.
You knew it. Okay. Suen, do you have any questions? Are you there?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I wasn't muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Um,
No, we cannot hear you. I think that's just like something not really much about it. Okay, then so I think we are wrapping today the session, like the session 18. I think that's a topic that is going anyways to appear again about that Yahweh or Yahweh or like I saw this yesterday a video about sorry for the part, but it is like a new flavor right now in Starbucks which is dulce de leche. And there were like a lot of people in America and also in England, I think so. They were trying to say this word, and for me, it's exactly Yahweh is the same. I don't know how to spell it. I'm trying to say it, and I just keep like, is that the real? Is the word that I should say it, or is something different? So anyway, that's going to repeat several times along the sessions. So if any one of you are super sure, 100% sure how to pronounce it, please let me know. Write it on the comments, or yeah, I hope that till the end I will have it fine. Otherwise, like, yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up, and I will not extrapolate about how to say Yahweh today. So, Gabriel, I cannot see you. Now I can see you. You were
I
somehow like on the corner.
can see you.
Do you wanna do a 5 minutes outro?
Oh, I can talk. Some of
Yes,
you know that I can talk. Yeah, of course. It'll be more than 5 minutes, I'm sure.
oh my God. We can sing together
Uh,
today a carol, like to celebrate Christmas if you wish to.
I'm up for that.
Okay.
Um, Daniel, are you wearing my favorite t-shirt that you have? Is that? Yes, you are. Uh, can I talk about that again? It's like when you're in love, all you talk about is, your beloved. When I'm in love with, the disciplines of the personality. I actually just recorded a video today talking about the disciplines of the personality. What does discipline mean? Actually, I'm gonna do an outro on this because Daniel has it there, and I have it very fresh in my memory. So I'll try to compress it here. What's up, Tad?
People who can see Daniel, do you mind to say what you are seeing on Daniel's t-shirt?
Oh, that is know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. It's my favorite t-shirt. I'm envious. I want one of those.
Yeah, where'd
Um,
you get that? I just printed it in an ordinary t-shirt shop.
That's too cool. I
Because
bet
you
if
are the
you made a link,
creator.
people would buy them.
Come, Adam, come again.
People would totally buy them.
Yeah, just Daniel took like really properly on words like be the creator, and he was like, okay, I'm going to be the creator. But yes, thank you, Gabriel, and continue. Sorry, because it's sometimes, people cannot see all the cameras, so it's really nice to talk what
True.
you're seeing.
Thank God for you, Tad. Thank the creator for you. So we have I love to talk to the subconscious mind because sometimes when we hear something that resonates, our conscious mind says, yes, of course. But the subconscious mind secretly is allowing the conscious mind to say yes. And when it shuts down, it whispers, no. So with discipline, there is a subconscious programming, I'm going to call that. There's an imprint in us that discipline is something that we want to avoid. We don't like discipline. Discipline is associated with the idea that it has to be something rigorous or control, very rigid. And we don't like that because we like our freedom. Free will loves to do whatever it wants. But the thing is that we know also that discipline is what allows us to achieve things at a mastery level. So if I want to lose weight or gain weight, I want to go to the gym and be disciplined at the gym and also in the kitchen, more importantly, in the kitchen. Um, and we know that that's the case. Now, something that I talked about in the video, I told you it was going to be more than 5 minutes. Um, if it's something very useful, it doesn't matter. I'm going to talk about disciplines of the personality in the end, but let's get this straight with discipline. If we want to do something, we always start with inspiration. So the sequence is inspiration. We all get inspired by something. we get this rush, of desire, like, whoa, I really want to do that. Inspiration is an unstable feeling in the body and the mind, meaning that it's heightened and then it kind of like dissipates. That's why we can get inspired by so many things during the day. And actually, people get addicted to this with social media, inspiration all the time, but no action. The second step would be motivation. You want to be motivated, right? Inspiration leads to motivation. Motivation is another feeling that lasts a little bit longer and yet it subsides. So, where inspiration could be a couple of seconds, minutes, hours, perhaps, uh, no more than a day, I would think, maybe cases, but motivation is what should follow. The very word means move, motion. So you're motivated to take action. Motivation can take a little bit longer, and yes, in last days, weeks, maybe a month. But then when we lose motivation, we step on the scale, maybe, we cheated in food and so on, whatever. I'm just using this analogy. It could be anything. I don't feel like, doing my training. I don't feel like meditating today and so on. Motivation dies eventually. We never get to that goal. I feel demotivated. So what's the bridge? Discipline. Discipline is continuously doing what you know you have to do, even if you don't want to. Even if the body complains and the mind complains and the voices and all that, you keep going. Discipline is that. So that's the bridge. Now, when you were a kid, you had to brush your teeth, right? You had to get discipline on that until it became a habit. Now it's a habit. You don't even think about it. You don't get inspired or motivated to brush your teeth anymore, unless you go to the dentist and they tell you something. You may get another incentive, but that's how you develop a habit. So discipline is actually not controlling. It frees you. It liberates you, contrary to what we believe. Now here's the kicker. In the disciplines of the personality, we're moving into the mystical search for unity to the creator. So, um, the most radical way to do this is to focus your attention, single pointed attention into one mental object, right? But then the direction of that should be remove the object and stay with what is. That's kind of strange because discipline can be defined as the focus of attention on a particular activity. But if that activity, which is activity is it's a mental process, and that's why in meditation, for example, you focus on one thing to, the other distractive thoughts that are coming through, you don't care, you just care about this one thing. But you can spend decades on that and still feel kind of, frustrated. I don't get it. It feels great. Yeah, I have great concentration, focus, but nothing's happening. It's because knowing yourself is not an activity. Knowing yourself is not something that the mind can do. So even with that mantra or image, when it is removed, what's happening is that you stay with what is. And what is you. And that's not an activity. You are not an activity. Activity is what you do. It's not what you are. And so disciplines of the personality is knowing yourself. That's the first indication, isn't it? Know yourself. But to know yourself is not an activity, actually. It's a recognition of that which is. And so even the last little thing that used to be an activity, which is the focus of attention of something, in the direct path, we bypass all of that. We go straight into who you are. You see it. It's there. It doesn't matter what activity is going on. You can always see what's behind the activity. You. Then comes acceptance. Accept yourself. But the thing is that acceptance, if it's given to the mind will say, all right, that's my activity now. I'll do that. And the mind's nature is to pick and choose. All right, I'm accepting all of this. I'm doing all of this. It turns out that if you know yourself, you know that you're pure acceptance. So acceptance is not even something that you have to do. It's just what you are. So accepting that which you are allows you to be in that space of pure acceptance. Becoming the creator just is a side effect of all of this. And that is the creative side that I was talking about. Because if you're in a place of acceptance within yourself, then that shadow work that we were talking about before happens spontaneously, effortlessly. And because there is a clearing of mental junk that's still there, which is preventing us from doing what we want, then there is a shy voice that's heard more and more. That's the voice of your service or the voice of the creator. And so now you're just acting effortlessly on things that you want to do. You feel, again, liberated. That's liberation, to be able to do everything that's coming through you without having to want to change it or have to conform with something else. So discipline actually frees you. Discipline of the personality being a defocusing of attention, which seems contrary to what the mind would expect. But you have to let the mind die. That's it. It's a defocusing of attention. The mind is pure attention. Defocus the attention, it goes back to source. Nothing like that. You're back where you started. Novel ideas will come through. So, yes, that's my last contribution for today. And to fill up those last 10 minutes, I told you.
No. Thank you so much. You started with something like it's really true, and you started with the word inspiration. So for the ones who already know, or for the ones who doesn't know, like inspiration actually has the word spirit. So it's in spirit. And where in the Latin, actually, inspirations mean like to take breath in, like you are breathing something new. It's something like you cannot really grasp. And then it goes to the mind and became motivation because you want to take an action. So like the root of inspiration is for sure come from the divine, like in the back in the cultures, what's from the divine, like it's something that you can really not explain. You are feeling something here, like, oh my God, what is happening? I feel amazed. I feel like glare. I feel like this, I don't know, something. And it's because the spirit somehow is there and it grabs your attention and then goes to motivation. And from the motivations goes really into the action, into this evocation, into the approach to start something. And that's when it recalls the conscious mind, you can start to follow your hero, your quest, your this hero path that you were like here to somehow meaningful, like you find your spark. So for those who really want to follow the inspiration, be aware that it's like this part of the spirit, and it's the first, like from the catalyst. It goes first of the spirit, then to the mind, and then to the body. So thank you so much, Gabriel, for naming that word today. Now we'll learn a little bit more about words, because we love to label things. Thank you so much, all of you, for your presence, for your time, for keeping us like working or like here being together and exchanging a little bit of thoughts, view, minds, and just growing in this beautiful space to hold this space together. We will see you for sure if you want to keep that in your spirit next week at the same hour. And don't worry for the ones who are not able to come or who are not able to be live. The sessions are always recorded. So we are going to have all the sessions together and you are always welcome to even comment on the sessions, and we will check on it and we can come to the answers after if you have some questions, of course. Thank you so much for today, and bye bye to everyone.